You're listening to Arcane Carolinas, an exploration of the Carolinas' folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Each episode, we examine the historical context of our topic and aim to preserve some of the stories that help make this part of the world such a fascinating place. Welcome back to Arcane Carolinas. I'm Charlie Mushaw, and I realized that every time I do an intro, I say a special episode, so I'm going to try to stop doing that.
I'm Michael G. Williams, award-winning science fiction novelist, and welcome to a very ordinary episode. I don't know, what are the alternatives?
Welcome to a competent episode.
How about exciting?
Exciting. Yeah, I am really excited about this one, so it's kind of funny that this is the moment that I realize, hey man, you got to stop calling every episode a very special episode.
It was especially funny to me that you said that, because right before we started, you were saying this is something that you're super into.
So we want to start off by thanking our Patreon backers. We really, really appreciate the support. We really appreciate everyone that interacts with us on social media. We've been sending out a lot of stickers and buttons and stuff, and it's fun building a community of people that are into this sort of weird crap.
Absolutely. It's so interesting to see the ways that people are eager to interact with others about this stuff. Not just it's interesting, not just they want to like a post, but they want to have conversations with us. They want to get stickers. They want to really celebrate this thing that we all love.
And along the lines of mentioning community, and I thank the Patreon backers, I'll announce here that I made a new special sticker and button that will be exclusive for Patreon backers. And every Patreon backer, regardless of their pledge level, will be receiving this exclusive sticker. You've seen it. It's the little lamp.
Yeah, it's really cool. Yeah.
So we'll put a picture of that up in the episode details for this. So today's story I have alluded to several times as Murder Quakers.
I am very interested in this because the file that you shared with me was just, or not the file you shared with me, but the calendar appointment to record you titled Quaker Oats.
Well, that was because I decided that Murder Quakers could be read two different ways, as either a description or an instruction. Right.
It could be in the imperative, and you don't want that.
Yeah. So instead, we're going to call this The Legend of Purgatory Mountain.
Oh, what a great name for a mountain. I love it.
And so Purgatory Mountain is in North Carolina. It is in Randolph County. The county was formed in 1779 from parts of Guilford and Rowan. It was named for a guy, Peyton Randolph, the first president of the Continental Congress.
Oh, okay.
Of the United States.
Yeah.
The first president of the Continental Congress, Peyton Randolph, fun fact, died while having dinner with Thomas Jefferson.
Oh, no way. Wow.
Yeah, he was sitting there, and apparently he had some internal bleeding and just sat there and slowly died over the course of a dinner with Thomas Jefferson, probably describing that he was uncomfortable. Kind of a weird story, right?
I've had some parties that, had moments that were duds, but I've never had anybody die over dinner.
It's just such a different time. You're just there, is that a bit of indigestion or am I passing?
Yeah.
Who's to say, let's keep eating?
Maybe dinner was super good.
This is a real person describing it this way. It's so disrespectful, but I'm imagining the old Monty Python sketch where it's I cannot have another bite.
Oh my God, Mr. Big.
That was Monty Python, right?
It's from The Meaning of Life.
So some of the first settlers of what became Randolph County were English Quakers, and they settled along the Haw, Deep, and Eno rivers predominantly, and that's going to come into play later in the story. Currently, it is home to the famous NASCAR family of drivers, the Pettys. All of them, for generations, lived in Randolph County.
Guess it's a good thing they didn't name it Petty County, Right.
But I was trying to drum up some interesting facts. I'm like, oh, Richard Petty. Oh, that other Petty. Oh, that other Petty. I guess they just all live there.
Yeah.
There are a lot of Quakers, comparative to other parts of North Carolina, still in Randolph County, which is interesting. When I was driving out to Purgatory Mountain as part of digging around on this story, I noticed how many meeting houses is what I think they call their churches, the Friend's House, all along the way out there. And I was like, oh, all right, cool. Randolph County was also the home of what is now Duke University, the original site of, I think it was Trinity College.
Yeah, originally it was called Trinity.
That was in Randolph County before they moved over to Durham. As far as local businesses go, I am going to plug the North Carolina State Zoo.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
I am not a huge fan of zoos, but this one is done in a way that I think is humane, and it's good. It's a good zoo. Huge areas for the animals to roam, and I think that is why, they chose the location that they did. And today's legend is actually on zoo property.
Oh, no way.
Yeah, Purgatory Mountain is owned by the North Carolina State Zoo.
That's awesome. Yeah, the State Zoo is not what you think of when you think of a zoo. It's not a bunch of sad animals in cages.
No.
It's huge areas of land for these animals to live in as their habitats. And there happen to be like walking trails and paved paths along the edges of some of them. And, they'll do things like do a feeding time so that some of the animals will show up to be seen from, the viewing locations. But a lot of these spaces, they are much larger than you imagine. It's much more of a preserve than a zoo.
Yeah, they're not doing the dolphin show at a resort.
Yeah, exactly. It's not creepy and gross.
So that's why I wanted to plug them, because one, it is a humane facility, and two, it's where our story actually is, which is interesting. So to call Purgatory Mountain a mountain is generous. It's not what you would think of when you think of a large peak. It's a low, relatively flat mountain on the northern edge of the Uwharrie range. And coincidentally, it's the geographic center of the state, which I thought was cool. There's a bit of a contest between them and another town, but geologists and, cartographers have gotten together and said, no, this is the actual geographical center of the state.
Interesting.
It's Purgatory Mountain. I went out there and I did a little hike and picnic. And as I mentioned, it's on state zoo property, so parking is super easy and free. There's some really nice trails. It's an interesting mix to your point of how much land was cleared over the course of North Carolina's history. It's a mix of hardwoods and pines. It's a good mix.
Oh, that's good.
Of trees, which I found to be interesting. And I thought of that point that you always bring up as I was walking around in the woods. I was like, there's a lot of oak, which I thought was cool. Good. Lots of quartz, tons of quartz deeper into the trail. I was surprised at how many little quartz stones were poking up out of the ground.
Wow. And
I will say that I was out there on a gorgeous day in September, and I did not hear or see a single bird or squirrel. It was oddly quiet for being like a 70-degree sunny day in September.
That is very strange.
I got weird vibes, we'll say.
Are you familiar with the Oz effect?
No.
A lot of people, when they encounter cryptids or they have other sort of strange or unusual events, unexplained events, everything from seeing a Sasquatch to a UFO, then they will describe what is termed the Oz effect occurring to them, which is that sense of all of a sudden everything around them goes very quiet, everything goes very still, and it feels as though time is dilated.
So that's interesting that you say that. My wife is tired of hearing me say this, but one of my favorite sensory experiences in the wintertime is when it's a cloudy day and sound is pretty much dead and you can hear the crunch under your boots as you walk. Like just little stones and dirt and stuff. It was kind of like that, but on a sunny, clear end of summer day. So that's interesting. I did not experience anything weird when I was out there, but I did have that feeling of it's oddly quiet. I didn't see anybody, didn't see any animals, didn't hear any animals. Before we get into the legend about the Uwharries, they are some of the oldest mountains in the world.
Oh, I would believe that.
And there are tons of stories about supernatural occurrences on them and in the areas surrounding them. Covens, ghost stories, not really any notable cryptids, but I did find one really over-the-top story about goblins.
Really?
Yeah. So I debated making that its own episode, but decided that based on the source, I would stick that in my back pocket and maybe save that for another one. I couldn't really verify a whole lot on that one.
Goblin sightings are very interesting to me because they're actually fairly common, but there's basically no research into them because they're not the sexy, hot new thing. Nobody's made an 11-season TV show about conspiracy theories around goblins, but they have around UFOs. So there's a lot of UFO researchers. There are very few goblin researchers.
So you're saying there's a niche.
Oh, yeah. No, if I were going to go become a dedicated researcher into this stuff, that's probably what I'd pick. Something like that.
All right. Arcane Carolinas is done. We are now Goblin Talk. We hope you've enjoyed Arcane Carolinas and our variety of topics. From here forth, we will only speak of goblins.
Like one of my favorite, like weird sighting kind of genres is that notion of goblins or gnomes.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of gnome sighting stories, things like that. But again, it's the sort of thing that people do not take seriously. So there's no research into it.
Well, I feel like you just challenged me, and now I'm going to dig deeper on my goblin story.
All right.
But that is not what we're talking about today. Today, we are talking about the legend of Purgatory Mountain. I've just given you a little bit of background on the mountain itself, and I mentioned that Randolph County had been settled by Quakers, and it's important to note for the sake of the story that Quakers are pacifists as part of their beliefs. They abhor violence, and they were staunch abolitionists, and they were not quiet about any of this. In 1830, a paper was published and distributed in North Carolina titled An Address to the People of North Carolina on the Evils of Slavery by the Friends of Liberty and Equality, published by a fellow William Swaim Printer, which I thought was funny that his last name was Printer and he was a printer. But you can find that in like state archives. You can find a copy of that. And it didn't really do much for the cause.
But you know what? Good on him for speaking out. That was a very brave position to take at that time.
Yeah. The overall political climate sort of started to gel in the state in ways that didn't really align with Quaker beliefs. And many just began to simply leave. They moved out west, they headed north. It's estimated that 10,000 Quakers left North Carolina between 1830 and the 1840s.
I would absolutely believe that.
And the population dropped to around 4,500. And by the time the Civil War became imminent, drafts were starting, and Quakers weren't going to fight. A lot of times, Quakers of age would flee into the woods or into the mountains and just start little camps. Figured they'd ride it out. They would desert if they were pressed into service. The Confederate Congress realized that this was a problem, so they began to offer a $500 exemption fee. $500.
Converted to today's money, that's thousands of dollars.
Right? But people paid it.
That's just wild. I feel such deep sympathy for these people because all they're trying to do is practice their beliefs. And their beliefs are the perfectly admirable belief of don't hurt people. And people are people.
It's kind of their jam.
Yeah.
So, of course, not everyone can afford that, right? And there's still like these dense pockets of population that you can't. Okay, it's not that you can't. It's that you don't want dense pockets of potential insurgents within your geographical territory, even if they are pacifists, because they might be helping other people that are against you.
Sure.
So the Confederate Congress said, okay, all right, we have certain types of work that we will accept as a substitute for military service. You could go work in the salt works in Wilmington.
Well, that sounds fun.
Right. Like working in a mine. Nothing against mining. It's just in the 1800s, that kind of sounds like a death sentence to me.
Yeah, manual labor wasn't fun for anybody.
The other thing that they offered was leather tanning and shoemaking, because those are trades that the Quakers as a community had already become known for. Some accepted this, and others said that they couldn't do it because they were still contributing to the war effort and supporting beliefs that they didn't back.
Yeah.
So some non-Quakers in the South, in particular in North Carolina, actually came to adopt the Quaker faith because they respected this firm rejection of the war and slavery. And these Quakers, neo-Quakers, became known as war Quakers. Which again, it's all in how you read it, right?
Yeah. I'm getting some big Warhammer 40K vibes where it's like Quakers in giant red wooden suits of armor tromping through the countryside saying to people, I refuse to hurt you.
See, what I picture is like the 80s action movie montage of like a close-up of like an arm and it like straps on like a piece of armor. And then like back of the head where you see him tying a headband like Rambo to the shot of the face, and it's the Quaker Oaths guy with like war paint under his eyes, like looking real stern directly at the camera, and it says "War Quakers." Anyway, I'm getting Rambo vibes.
That's so wild. That's just really fascinating to me.
So as you can imagine, this causes strife with some neighboring counties and even pro-Confederacy groups within Randolph County. And this was explored in depth in the January 1984 edition of a journal called the North Carolina Historical Review. If you want to find it, it's online. It's free. It's volume 61, issue number 1.
If you'll send me the link to that, I'll put it in the show notes.
Sure. It's very interesting how divided different areas were.
Oh, the county that I grew up in voted 9-1 against secession. They were not interested in being a part of the Confederacy.
What episode did we talk about that in? We talked about that in another episode. Devil and Hezekiah Jones. We talked about that in Devil and Hezekiah Jones.
That's right. Yeah.
So Randolph County has, a relatively diminished Quaker population, but it's still a hotbed overall of unionism and people hiding out to avoid the war.
Mm-hmm.
So somewhere towards the end of the war, draft efforts took on a more desperate and sinister methodology where the state...
I think it's important to emphasize the more sinister part of that.
Correct. So the state would hire men to go out and capture deserters or people of age that were resisting the draft and bring them to the army by force, willing or not, which is a great way to engender support within the ranks of your troops.
Up in the mountains, the Home Guard was more than just looking for deserters. They were basically independent raiding parties running around saying that they had the power of the law behind them. They were basically just brigands, just riding around the mountains on horseback, robbing whoever was around, taking what they wanted.
It is interesting that you bring that up because you have not seen my notes, and we're going to get to that.
Oh, good. And if you happen to be a science fiction fan and you've ever watched Babylon 5, then you're familiar with their use of the term Home Guard to describe some really terrible people in the future.
So these roles were sometimes described as hunters, and they were not, as you just described, particularly well liked by everyone.
Sorry, I hope I didn't step on anything that you're going to talk about.
No, it's just interesting that you already have that background because I did not.
Something that got talked about a lot in my family.
And this is why we make a good duo. Because we have different perspectives.
My grandmother had some really firm opinions about the Home Guard being bad people.
So there you go. This is great. So they weren't particularly well liked by everyone. They were paid by the body. So the more people you brought in, the more you would make.
Mm-hmm.
And that doesn't always make for ethical practice.
Yeah, that's not exactly the best way to incentivize good behavior.
So our legend centers on one of these hunters, commonly referred to in the story as capital T, capital H, the hunter.
Oh.
Yeah. A burly, black-bearded man who had allegedly been a bit of a bad dude for the better part of his life. Dark deeds involving murder, stuff like that. All very vague, just like general bad dude going around capturing people and dragging them to Wilmington where they would get pressed into service.
It kind of sounds like these guys were basically the North Carolina equivalent of witch finders. Like really terrible people who just go around the countryside targeting whoever is vulnerable and dragging them away.
The Confederate Inquisition.
Yeah, that's not a bad way to term them.
This guy, the subject of our legend, figures the Quakers will be easily captured. They're not violent. They won't even fight. I'll just basically get a giant bag of cash if I drag in a whole village worth of Quakers. So he heads off to Ashboro, kicks in the doors of the meeting house on a Sunday. He's brandishing his weapons and just says, all right, everybody of age, you're coming with me. And he dragged all the boys and young men out, tied them all up like a chain gang, with rope, like ropes them all together and proceeds to start marching them to Wilmington. He was playing Quakers in a barrel. Basically, he waited till they were all in one place, walked in, knew they weren't going to fight, and just tied them all up. 22 is the magic number that I found in a couple of different legends.
Wow.
A couple of different accounts of this legend.
What a horrible human being he was.
So he made it a day or two on the march before he decided to stop into a tavern because, as I mentioned, this is towards the end of the war. He wanted to get a drink. Taverns were sources of local news. People traveling might have, like where troops were moving in the area because he doesn't want to run into the wrong people as he's got 22 Quakers in tow. So he stops into a tavern to get some intel, have a drink, get something to eat. Has a little bit much, gets a little drunk. They waited till he was good and passed out that night. And they started booking. And they were only a day or two out from where they had been captured. As you can imagine. Once
they cut their bonds, like they'd be able to move faster, things like that.
Right. So he's the hunter, right? So it's not going to be super hard to track 22 men
Are you suggesting that they don't specialize in like leather crafting of stealth suits?
Right. They are not the war Quakers that make the leather stealth suits.
Right.
So these are regular Quakers. So they start making their way back, and they realize they're like, if we go home, he is going to kill everyone.
Yeah.
Like, we cannot go home. He will find us. So they ran up Purgatory Mountain.
Okay.
He tracks them to the Purgatory Mountain area. He knows he's close. So he basically proceeds to walk around screaming, if you don't come out when I find you, I'm going to kill all of you. And then I'm going to go kill your families.
Mm-hmm.
So they're like, all right, we gotta do something. And they decide that they're going to kill him. They are going to go against everything they believe in, and they are going to kill him.
I
support this. I have no problem with this.
Yeah,
I understand.
I, not being a Quaker and not being a fan of anybody who wanted to further the cause of the Confederacy, or anybody who wanted to do things like kidnap people and sell them into army service.
Or murder an entire village.
Yeah, or murder an entire village. Or even better, revenge murder an entire village. I think that this guy's probably got it coming. I don't have any problem with it. I sympathize deeply with these Quakers because they're people of real conscience who have like lived their principles their whole lives. And now they're down to this wire where they are having to choose between literally those principles or those lives, and not just their lives. They might have sacrificed themselves for their principles. I don't know. But the lives of everyone that they care about? Gosh, I can't imagine being in that situation, except that if I were in that situation, I would gladly murder this dude.
Yeah, like there's 22 of us and there's one of him. Like somebody's going to get hurt. We might lose one or two, but is it, do you want him to go kill your mom?
Yeah. I mean, it's, it's like 1864 or something. It's going to take him 5 minutes to reload his gun.
Right. He might get one of us.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Maybe.
Maybe Quakers have like special evasive maneuvers or something.
Maybe. I don't know. They might get a special move.
How long does it take for their special ability to recharge after use?
The cooldown on Quaker evasion.
Go ahead and roll a 20.
Right.
I'm sorry, you rolled an 8. Quaker evasion fails.
Oh. It's okay, though, because we're in an era in which rifling is the bleeding edge technology. So this dude probably doesn't have it.
Yeah. Yeah, he's got to roll a natural 20 to hit with the the firearms he's got. So they come up with a plan, and it's a good plan. One of them is going to play Jackrabbit and let himself be seen and get the hunter to give chase.
I like this.
One of the boys is like, all right, I'm quick. He said, I'll do it. So he puts himself out there, and it's just like, I don't want you to kill everybody. Just come get me. I'm right here. I'm willing to come in. And then he starts after him, and the kid turns around and runs. And they had set a snare and, like narrow path snare. Mm-hmm. They get him, and then they hang him.
Wow. They're not kidding around.
They hang him. He's dead. And they're all sworn to secrecy. And they say, we're going to go back home, and we can't talk about this. This is our cross to bear.
Mm-hmm.
Let's just go back, and nobody knows anything. All we know is that we ran away, and that's it. Shortly thereafter, there begin to become into the village reports of a ghostly figure with fire in his eyes wandering Purgatory Mountain late at night.
Oh, I like this. Okay.
With the long leather coat, like it's the guy, but there's
no doubt about him.
Yeah, it's the spirit of the hunter, cursed to wander Purgatory Mountain till the end of days.
You know what I say to that? Good.
So that's one angle. What about the hunter's perspective? Because I found the hunter.
Okay.
I found his great-great-great-grandson's account that has legitimate documentation of who the person was in combination with family oral tradition.
Wow, no way.
Now, I'm going to omit a name. I'm not going to say who the great-great-great-grandson is.
Sure.
And I'm going to omit one or two details of like modern addresses of where certain events occurred, just out of privacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not interested in making anybody the target of something.
Right. So this is pretty wild. This is the first time that we have had the perspective of the monster.
Yeah.
Right? we follow these folklore stories and we follow these legends, and it's always, usually we can find one or two people that like we can trace back to, like, oh, Hezekiah Jones was probably this guy, or the Raleigh Blob definitely happened because that happened like 10 years ago.
Yeah, right.
No big deal. Even cryptid sightings, we can find the person, but like
Totally.
we never like find the Squatch's opinion of what he saw when he smelled the pork barbecue and decided to go to.
He doesn't leave a note tacked up that says that barbecue looked real good.
All I was doing was going on my walk and I smelled some barbecue and I just wanted to look. I don't know why they ran away. I'm a little hurt, frankly.
Oh, poor Sasquatch. Poor Georgia Sasquatch.
Love a good Squatch tale.
It's not easy being different in a rural area.
I just got the more you know. Like, empathy for Squatch. So the hunter was named Peter Garner, and the hunter was a native of southeastern Randolph County, born about 1831. He was the son of Peter Garner Sr. and Elizabeth Morgan. He married a woman named Susanna Latham on February 26, 1857. She was the daughter of James Latham and Lucretia Garner. Peter and Susanna had 5 children. Julia, wow. Yeah, it was a different time.
It was.
Julia, born in 1858. Lucy, born 1860. Sarah, 1862. James Henry, 1864. And Christina Louise Garner, born 1865. During the war, Peter Garner, our guy, the hunter, was a conscript detailed from Mallett's battalion to hunt deserters. So he was a hunter. He was well-versed in the philosophy of hunting, and that's a quote from some of the accounts that I found. And these are sourced from various Civil War books and county records and stuff. And I'll give you all that for the show notes. So Confederate troops said, okay, well, you're a really good, like, actual hunter. We're going to detail you to the hunters unit, and that's what you're going to do. And as you mentioned, he was given the authority to command small detachments of troops. So he had his little band of marauders that would go run around. So that's why I got kind of excited when you mentioned that. I was like, oh, I don't even have to explain that.
Yeah, this is very typical. The Confederate government basically just decided to terrorize its own population.
And he was so successful by applying his traditional hunting and tracking skills on people that he became known regionally as the hunter. He was known to wear a large gun and knife on his belt and a rope hung from under his coat that he kept on him to tie people up.
Wow.
And this is the family account.
Yeah.
This is a combination of the family and the historical research account that matches the legend. He was well known. He's notorious. Being aware of him and his reputation, this is the family account. In late 1864, a band of deserters decided, we're going to kill him before he eventually finds us. So they stationed themselves across the stream from where he lived so that they could watch him for a couple of days. Every morning, he would go out and collect his fish traps. There's a little bit of stuff about his daughter Julia in there, always accompanying him, which is like decidedly family lore. There was 3 of them, 3 of these deserters. And they decided that they were going to wait until an opportunity came where the little girl wasn't there because they didn't want to accidentally kill the little girl.
Sure.
So they sat in waiting, and they had loaded their guns with a double charge of powder and 4 bullets in each. So they basically made impromptu scatter guns.
Mm-hmm.
They waited till he was out there. They waited till the girl was away from him. One of them kept watch. 2 of the deserters ambushed him, killed him, and cut the brass buttons off of his coat as trophies.
I mean, you got to pay for all those bullets somehow.
The family came. The girl runs, gets help. Deserters are gone. Peter's family took the body home and buried him on his own property.
Mm-hmm.
And I found the property. I have the address. And you can track who owned it through land records. There's even an approximation of the body's current location, which is not far from a chicken coop.
This is the most concrete detail that I've ever heard around a legend like this.
It's absolutely wild. And he was survived by his wife and 4 children. She was pregnant with the 5th at the time of his demise. And that child is the great-great-grandmother of the fella that shared this story. So that's the tie to everything. Don't go looking up names. His last name is not Garner. You please don't harass these people. They're several generations removed. The coroner's inquest is public record, confirms the death by gunfire, confirms like the scattershot theory. there's birth records, there's death records, there's land records, there are military records that all tie to this. And the family acknowledges that there are multiple legends in the community about his spirit lurking on Purgatory Mountain seeking vengeance for his murder. They just have a slightly different perspective on it, and some of the details are different.
Yeah.
And I have a theory.
Go for it.
I have a theory that the Quakers had nothing to do with this at all, but were used as a scapegoat because they were different.
That is immediately what I wondered. Not at the beginning, but as you were like just recounting the differences between the family account and the legend, that it started occurring to me, what if somebody's basically used the Quakers as cover for this?
Yeah. Oh, they're sworn to secrecy. They'll never tell you about it.
Yeah. It would be very easy for somebody to convince themselves, well, of course the Quakers told me they didn't murder anybody. That just means they did.
I really think this is a case of the Quakers being viewed as others and outsiders and strange and misunderstood. And, you know, I'm not excusing any deeds that Confederate soldiers did, but if you were going to kill somebody that you knew was going to come for you, wouldn't it be really easy to cover it up by pointing at the people that will never be able to really defend themselves against the story?
Yeah, I think that makes a very believable explanation. I don't at all blame these people for killing this guy. This guy sounds like a terrible person. Whatever. I'm not judging them at all. They probably did a lot of people a service. My sympathies do not lie with the hunter. At any rate.
No.
But I think it's fascinating that what they did was immediately use, like you said, somebody who was different, somebody who can't come up with an alibi, somebody that the community would readily believe, had they done this, would obviously deny it. You just sort of immediately lock the truth away behind this impenetrable wall of assumptions and prejudices and facts that sort of interlock like Legos of deceit. It's very interesting to me.
Yeah, and there's kernels of truth in it, which is what's wild to me. Like, the address of where he's buried is right down the road from Purgatory Mountain. Like, you could walk to it. It is so cool how the different pieces connect, and both sides and everyone agrees that his spirit haunts the mountain. The family lore has a detail that the other legends online did not, and that is that he is most commonly seen in the hour or two before sunup, the witching hour.
So the family lore includes the ghost.
Yeah.
My assumption was that the family lore was going to wind up including, but of course he's not haunting Purgatory Mountain, he's buried out back. And instead you're saying that the family is like, that ghost is a part of the family legend too.
Yep.
Wow. This is such a complex situation. I think this is a great opportunity to like contrast the way that historical facts can be used to support and also to undercut, say, a conspiracy theory or anything like that. Somebody has constructed a version of events that they find preferable. And like you said, there are these kernels of truth in it that one person might say is evidence that the conspiracy is true, and another person might say is evidence the conspiracy is not.
One thing that supports my going theory that you happen to agree with somebody killed this guy, then blamed the Quakers, and then started like, hey, did you hear what the Quakers did? Is that by the end of the Civil War, it's estimated that there were only 2,000 Quakers left in the entirety of North Carolina.
Wow.
So we were at like 4,500 when the war started, and it dropped down to 2,000 by the end, thus making them even more of a rarity and more of something that people wouldn't necessarily understand. Like, if you know a whole bunch of Quakers, right, and you're in the community, you're like, no, I know them. Like, I know their deal. Yeah. They're fine. Like, they had nothing to do with that. But if you don't know any of them, you might be like, I don't know them. I don't know what they do.
Yeah, if you take the word Quaker out of it and you reframe it as, well, there's an obscure religious sect and there aren't very many of them around, and they probably murdered somebody because, I heard from Joe Bob, whose sister-in-law heard from the family doctor or whatever. You can take that idea and transplant it directly into the now, and there are plenty of people who would be willing to believe it.
But obscure religious sect oats doesn't sound as good as Quaker oats.
These people could very easily be turned into the Boo Radley of a community.
Mm-hmm. So that's the legend of Purgatory Mountain. So I went out there. Let me see if I got these pictures to show you. And there's a bit of a sunshiny little thing that I want to share in the midst of this story. Let's talk about nature. Purgatory Mountain is also home to Schweintz's sunflower. It is a very rare flower found in 12 counties of North Carolina and 2 in South Carolina. And it happens to be able to be seen on Purgatory Mountain.
Wow. That is so neat.
There's all kinds of weird, fun stuff like this if you just look for it. Like Occoneechee Mountain in Orange County has a butterfly that isn't found anywhere else, I think on the eastern seaboard. It's got like this super rare butterfly. But yeah, here's some pictures. See, very nice trails.
Oh, that's very nicely done.
And you can see that it's a lot of hardwood and scrubby bushes in this particular portion. You think that's a goblin? That little thing? Might be
a goblin right there. Like that's a nice wide gravel trail with bumpers on the edges. Like that's not difficult going. That's like very accessible.
There are more difficult trails if you want them. The deeper you go in, they have like different trails in different stages of development. But the core trail is very easy, and it'll take you right to the top, and it's very short. A lot of stone outcroppings, and like I said, the deeper you go, like the closer you get to the top, the more quartz you'll find, which I thought was really cool.
That is really neat.
So yeah, I'll put those pictures in the Facebook album that we do.
Yeah,
if we had, and that's pretty much it for Purgatory Mountain. I want to go back now that I have more intel, I guess you'd call it. Again, I'm not going to take pictures of the property because there is a house currently on the property. It's certainly not the house from when the story originates, but there is a house and people do live there. But I just kind of want to look at it.
I think for me, part of the experience that we need to be mindful of having so much history immediately accessible to us in both of the Carolinas is keeping in mind that a lot of that history is accessible to us because there are real living people around who have worked to make that information available and accessible to the rest of us. And we need to respect and appreciate the fact that they have done so. The fact that this descendant of the person has made their family lore accessible to us is amazing, and respecting their privacy is a great way to say thank you.
So I think that's it, right?
I think so. I do hope he's wandering that mountain, though. Like, I'm sure that his descendants are perfectly nice people, but I hope he's wandering.
I really want to write a nice letter to the zoo and ask if I can go out there at night.
Ooh, I like that idea.
I don't know that they've done like a proper ghost walk on the mountain, but they have done in the past as a fundraiser. They've done larger like haunted events when funding was a little bit low. And I feel like probably write a nice enough letter to be like, I'm not going to mess anything up. Just kind of want to walk around at 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning.
Is the Purgatory Mountain Trail, I know that it's on zoo property. Is it something that's like behind the entrance to the zoo and that you have to buy a ticket?
Nope.
Or just go park at the zoo and go for the hike?
Totally free. It's even got a big sign. It's got several signs, actually. One thing that I thought was hilarious was on one of the signs, they're like, nobody knows why it's called Purgatory Mountain. Maybe it's because moonshiners used to tell people stories to keep them away.
I feel like the story is why people call it Purgatory Mountain. I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting.
It wasn't called that before.
It wasn't called that until the doomed spirit of some horrible person was trapped there forever. But it's a coincidence.
So, yeah, no. It's definitely because of moonshiners.
Yeah, totally. Definitely moonshiners.
Anyway, thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back soon with more folklore, legends, myths, and modern weird. Want to play us off?
Yeah, I'll play us off.
You've been listening to Arcane Carolinas. Thanks for joining us. If you liked it, give us a rating, leave a comment. If you didn't like it, send us an email and tell us why. If you're not wrong, we'll try to fix it.
And if you're interested in award-winning speculative fiction, including science fiction, urban fantasy, and horror, find me, Michael G. Williams, at www.michaelgwilliamsbooks.com and check out Falstaff Books at falstaffbooks.com.
If you'd like to pick up some Arcane Carolinas merch, look at behind-the-scenes info, pictures, videos, stuff like that, all the things that get cut, check out arcanecarolinas.com, where you can get access to our Patreon, our Facebook, our Twitter, our Instagram, all that in one place, including the merch store. Buy a shirt.
Clothe your body.
Drape your body in our wares.
Be our living billboards.